Welcome to the Angels Win podcast with former Angels broadcaster Richter Rojas, featuring Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. And now it's time to talk about some baseball. Richter, take it away.
It is that time again. It's episode 9 of the Angels Win podcast. I'm Richter Rojas along with Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. We're so glad you could join us. Perhaps a day late, but I'm feeling much better. And guys, hope you both had a wonderful Father's Day. I know mine was a little bit on the shady side, but it was great to see my dad, my brothers, and hang out with them. And overall, it was a fantastic day. So cheers to Father's Day. Cheers to you guys. And I hope you guys had a great weekend.
Yes, cheers to both of you and fathers everywhere.
Any thoughts that come to mind or that come back to mind anyways every time Father's Day rolls around? Chuck, I'll start with you, buddy.
Yeah, I feel blessed in that I had a close relationship with my biological dad and my stepdad, who I lived with my mom growing up, and both were just huge sports fans. And my stepdad was a big Angels fan. He would always have the games either on TV or on the radio. And so I would always hear the games, the names of the players. We would go on road trips and the game was on, and I'd see him, pumping his fist or saying, crap, and I was just I'd get into it with him. And then I started learning the game. Obviously I played Little League at that time. I was 9 years old, and it just got me into it. And in 1979, I started cutting clippings out of the newspaper of, the Angels, victories that year. And of course it was a special year for the Angels. Mm-hmm. And that's what, really just inspired me to become not just even a fan of the Angels, but sports in general. The passion I would see of my dad running around the living room screaming or mooning the TV because an umpire had a bad call. And then later I was shaking my head and, laughing during this. And then I ended up doing that stuff around my kids, when I was a parent. And so anyway, that's kind of a Father's Day story on my side.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad you can, I don't want to say the best of both worlds, but you had a wonderful experience, not only with your biological dad and your stepfathers. That's wonderful, and cheers and happy Father's Day to you. Geoff, how about yourself, my man?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned on the podcast a couple of times, my dad was a big Angels fan and had season tickets for about 20 years before we all relocated to Colorado. And, just over the weekend as we were kind of prepping for the show and, had put this on the docket as something we'd talk about, I was thinking about all the different memories and times we had, and being there when Reggie Jackson hit his 500th home run, being there for Mark Langston's first home game, which turned into a shared no-hitter, going through the whole Wally World time, Tim Salmon's rookie year. It just, some really fun, great memories. He was very busy traveling for work, so he'd often give me the tickets, and I get to go to the game with my buddies. And then my oldest son was born in 2002, so that was a special year for me, becoming a father, but then also just kind of that magical season. Mm-hmm. And then, kind of the 10 years that followed that, where the team was just so good and always relevant. And, my three boys, Griffin, Nolan, and Chase, just, wrapping them into, to the love of the Angels. And in fact, we went out to lunch yesterday for Father's Day. They took me out to lunch, and my Father's Day present was tickets for this Friday. The Angels are coming to Colorado
Nice.
For a 3-game series. So I'm excited to be able to go see the game with them.
That's
Geoff,
awesome.
I didn't know that your son was born in 2002. That's when Trinity was born, my youngest.
Yeah.
December.
That's the magic of the podcast. We bring everyone together and magic happens. It's amazing, isn't it?
Chuck, we've only known each other for about 19 years, so it's not surprising that we haven't run across this.
Well, I've shared with you guys a number of different stories, and obviously baseball related. And when you talk about Father's Day and stuff like that, because it happens in the summertime, there's just any number of great moments that I've had with my dad, my family, brothers, whatever, however you want to kind of encapsulate it all. I think the coolest part now is, as you guys know, most people don't, that Tyler graduated almost a month ago, a little over a month ago now, and we had it already planned that we were moving, since we're empty nesters, or going to be empty nesters. We were moving to South Florida to be closer to my mom and dad. So we're in the Naples area. Kim's from Fort Lauderdale originally, so her parents are just an hour and a half away on the other coast. And so when I talk about like Father's Day's memory, I mean, just being able to hang out with my dad on a daily basis if I wanted to, or him coming with us to the batting cages. He was there for graduation a month ago in Texas. And I'm not saying that he's completely different, but you could just see how excited he is that he has all four boys right there, within a 20-mile radius. It's a really cool experience, and it's the best thing that we've ever done. And I'm thankful to be down here. So that's kind of my memories happening as we speak. Dad's 84. Kim's parents are 92 and 93 respectively. I mean, it's just like the perfect time to be down here near family. So that's kind of where I'll leave it as far as my Father's Day memory is concerned. If you've never joined our podcast, or this is your first time joining our podcast, it's pretty simple. We're talking about Angels. We talk about baseball. This week we could talk about a lot of things, because obviously with the Oakland A situation last week, any number of things. There was an article that came out today in The Athletic about the Rangers, and they're the only team in Major League Baseball that does not host a Pride Night. But typically we stick to the Angel side of things. If we get some time where the conversation flows one way, we go that way, and hey, whatever happens, happens. So it's kind of a free-flowing show. And typically we get to a mailbag towards the end of the show, and we'll answer your questions. So we're going to go back in time to what last week happened. And it was a very good week for the Angels. I mean, on episode 8, we talked about going into the Rangers and Royals series that got to go in. It's a must-win series. I said if it's a split of a 4-game series with Texas, to me, that's a loss. Halos went in there, took 3 of 4 from Texas, and then went into Kansas City, won the first one, lost the second one, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go. The Sunday game is they're going to lose Sunday, and it's just going to negate the entire week. But they ended up picking up the victory. It was a fantastic 4-2 stretch. And now, with an off day on Monday, they have a 2-game series against the Dodgers coming up, and you're in a pretty good position. They're in second place in the American League West, 4.5 games back. I think they're in the second spot of the wild card, 1 game up on was it the Yankees and Red Sox?
Houston.
Astros,
yeah. The whole wild card thing, to me, I don't get a whole geeked up about like where they're at right now. To me, it's like how many teams are ahead of you. That's the more important thing, is instead of how many games back you are. Because it's way too early to talk about the wild card. To me, if you have 4.5, that's still a manageable deficit to get to a division title. And I think that's ultimately what every team is going after, is a division title. They served notice last week. And part of that notice was, hey, we're here. They found some bodies to plug in some of the holes, because there's some water leaking. There's some dikes to fill there, right? And some of these young guys have done that. On top of that, we've got some veteran guys that went down. Gio Urshela, that just sounds awful. The pelvic fracture just does not sound good at all. He's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. And then on Monday, today, we find out that Anthony Rendon, even though it's retroactive to being hit by a pitch last week in Texas, is going on the 10-day IL. So a myriad of circumstances. I'll let you guys kind of flush that out. Fantastic week. You got some injuries. Now you got to deal with the Dodgers and the lowly Colorado Rockies in Denver. No offense, Jeff. No offense.
None
I know they're going to Mile High City.
None taken.
But I'll tee it up with you guys with that.
I'll start off if I could, Chuck. I think, one of the things that I'm most bullish about of their recent production, their recent wins, is that they've been doing it shorthanded. They've been doing it by plugging people in where they need to, where they can, who can play first, who can play third, do you play shortstop as well? They're just, rotating guys around and plugging them in where needed in kind of this scrappy way. But in doing so, they've been winning. They've been pulling it together. They've been making it happen, and they've been putting, W's on the board. And I think that's huge. With Neto being out, the other injuries that Victor mentioned, concerning, right? But they keep plugging away. They keep winning. And, Chuck, when I look at the last week, 2 weeks plus, that's one of the things that I'm most impressed by and that I'm most bullish about.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, especially like we talk about the 2002 club. In every club, really, that's successful and goes to the playoffs, you have to plug in guys for injuries. There's always going to be injuries. There's going to be injuries to key players all the time. You look at in 2002, Brad Fulmer went down, right? Scott Spezio stepped up. You had guys like Benji Gill and Sean Wooten and Alex Ochoa, a bunch of guys that stepped up. Aaron Seeley went down that year, right? John Locke came up and was a stud. And so you have to have not just good position player depth that you would acquire players from the offseason via free agency and trades, but a good farm system. And I think we're starting to see some of these guys that Perry has drafted over the last couple of years, and even before him in Epler with, and Matt Thaiss and some of these guys, they're stepping up huge for the Angels. Who would have thought that after Logan O'Hoppe went down, that Chad Wallach and Matt Thaiss would just be absolute superstars at the catching position for this team?
I know Chuck Richter didn't think that.
No, nobody did. Nobody did. And so, you can argue that, he's a guy that you need to keep on your roster because he could play first base, catch, but nobody thought that he was going to play at the level that he's playing at. And especially Chad Wallach, he's been a stud. So, you look at this team, and now they're even thinking about moving Hunter Renfroe off of right field to first base. He's been taking grounders at first base because Jared Walsh hasn't been hitting. And maybe, they want to get Mickey Moniak some playing time, like everyday playing time in right field. And maybe even call up Joe Adele to do a straight platoon in right field. He's been crushing it. So the depth this year is huge for the Angels. We can't. I think, Jeff, and you and I are big Anthony Rendon fans, but the guy just, for whatever reason, can't stay in the field now. Granted, getting drilled in the wrist has nothing to do with being injury prone. Right. That's going to happen to anybody. Give me a break.
Yeah.
But it's just unfortunate that it had to happen to him because when he's on the field, good things happen. He's an on-base machine. He hits well and with runners in scoring position. But yeah, to your point, the players have stepped up in place of the players that have gone down. Some guys have pitched better. Sandoval's pitched better. Detmers has pitched better since the last we talked. And let's face it, Ohtani's unworldly at the plate.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that I take away from it, and I'm talking about last week, obviously, and the club in general is that, gosh, for an extended period of time, we've been talking about how they fail or have failed against teams that are good, teams over 500, and have taken care of business with teams that are under 500. And that was a pretty good trend for a couple of months, right? So I think that's the one positive that I look at it is going into this week, especially against the Dodgers that you got coming up. The Dodgers, certainly not the Dodgers of the last couple of years, but still, 6 games over 500. Arizona's still leading that division. And I still shoot myself because I said before the start of the season that I was going to put some money down on Arizona. I just felt like they were their core of their players and their farm system was ready to just – and it was a long shot. But whatever, I digress. Just stupid for not making that decision. And we're not – I'm just having fun with it. But the Angels have did exactly what we've been talking about that they haven't been able to do all season long. Now, can they do it consistently, right? Going forward, what do you got, 2+ weeks or 3+ weeks or so till the All-Star break, 16, 17 games between now and the All-Star break, the ceremonial halfway point of the season. I'd like for the next 3 weeks for it to be something that's consistent that way. It's a 2-game series against the Dodgers, so it's 1-1. I guess that's a push, but it's a win, if you will. You just don't want to get swept by the Dodgers going into an off day and then taking on the Rockies. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing. And then 2, as you were talking about the injuries, is how these guys have stepped up. And last year it was such a poorly constructed team, from, let's say, your starting 8 down to the 26th man, that you had zero depth, and it was just a shit show. It really was. I mean, it was put the names on a wall, throw darts, and said that's going to be my starting second baseman, that's my starting shortstop, there's my starting third baseman, and none of them with any real track record. Not that Brandon Drury jumps off the page, but I mean, he's taking advantage of the opportunities that have presented themselves. And I think that's all you can ask for when you're going to get guys, especially from a depth perspective, I should say, that they are capable of. You hope that they live up to who they have been at the major league level. That you don't need them to be a superstar. You just don't want them to be really crappy or on the down slope of their career. You just want them to be able to maintain what they've done at the big league level. And I think you're starting to see that, coupled with young guys that don't know any better, that figure, say, I'm getting an opportunity here. Mm-hmm. Let me go gangbusters here. And I've got nothing to lose, right? What's the worst case scenario? If you're a young guy, what's the worst case scenario? You come up, you shit the bed. Oh, I'm going back down to the minor leagues for more seasoning, which, that's probably where you normally would see in a real deep team. Bachman would still be down. Any number of guys would still be down there getting that season. Ben Joyce, so on and so forth. But because they've been forced to be up at the big league level, they've just taken advantage of the opportunity. So I think, you start comparing to last year, and it's like, well, gosh, anything is better than last year's, from mid-May through the end of the season. I like the way this team has been able to step up and taken advantage of the situation. Now I just want to see the consistency going forward, that they do take care of business against the good teams. Mm-hmm. And that's my hope, at least over the next 3 weeks before the All-Star break. And then you have to make a decision for the trade deadline on August the 1st as to what you're going to go out and need, want, move, build for the future, any number of things before that trade deadline.
Yeah. And, another thing, as much as I'm impressed by the way that they've been able to plug holes on a day-to-day basis, at what point does that stop becoming something that you can count on and rely on? And do you need to shift into more consistency and continuity of guys knowing where they're going to be, both in the field and in the lineup, in order to, I don't know if it's take it to the next level or solidify a certain level of success that you can build upon and take into the second half of the season. Again, as much as I'm impressed by what they've done, I do worry about that.
I do have a follow-up real quick, just
sure.
On that point. Is there a concern that, like, every team has injuries, and it seems as if, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just too close to it, but it seems as if those teams that are in the upper echelon, that are consistently good at the top of the division, going for playoff push and stuff like that, they'll have a guy go down, maybe 2, they're able to plug the hole. It seems like for the Angels over the last couple of seasons, it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what I mean? It's like this multitude of injuries or whatever, bad luck or circumstances. And it's not, you're not just plugging in with one guy or 2 guys. It's like 5 or 6 guys. And now you're down to you're past your 40-man roster, and you got to make a 40-man roster move to bring somebody on. And so am I misreading that? It just feels like for the Angels that it always seems like it's like, it's a handful of guys, not just 1 or 2 where you have to worry about.
The joke on the at Angels Win is dehydration is what they always use. They're not eating enough bananas and drinking enough water. So anyway, I don't know. It's a fair point to bring up because it is a thing that we've seen with this team over the years. But I think you talk about the depth. And to your point, Victor, it is concerning. Brandon Drury's been a stud, right? You lose him now. Guess who you're plugging in every day? Luis Rengifo, right? Even if Zach Neto is back, so then you're plugging in guys that aren't necessarily everyday positive contributors to the lineup. So, man, I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Victor? Do you think there's anything to the pregame regiment and stretching and time in the gym, of that, or is it just bad luck?
I think it could be any combination of things, right? Because it's not as if the Angels have maintained the same training staff, strength and conditioning staff for the last 15 years. And then you go, okay, we just need a change in philosophy. They've rotated guys, as I see it in the media guides. They've rotated guys through there, right? So it's hard because they're not going to give us that information of what they go through. Anything can happen. And I get that through the course of a 6+ month season, things are going to happen from a physical nature that you just can't help. The other thing that I think about as you were talking, Chuck, is like, hold your breath, because we're at that stage in Mike Trout's career where it's like, make sure you bubble wrap him because right. you want to make sure that he stays healthy going forward. And especially if, the last 2 days, 3 games, maybe the way he's swinging the bat is any indication. And I always feel like he's swung the bat well against Zach Greinke. I don't know why. That he continues to progress and is able to turn his offensive side around this year. So I don't know what the question or the answer is to your question as far as the conditioning, freak injuries. Guys are much stronger. The weight training nowadays is different than it was 40 years ago, 35 years ago, 20 years ago. Seems to be more bulk, but then again, you get more guys from a conditioning perspective it's more about lean muscle and, quick twitch and doing all kinds of exercise. I think it's a constant evolution, right? And I think the Angels have addressed it. I think that's why you've seen some changeover in certain positions from a training staff perspective. So I would probably chalk it up more so to just bad luck, bad timing. You brought up Rendon. Unfortunately for him, in his Angels career, he's been injury prone, whether it's hit by a pitch or a throw or the leg or whatever the case. It is what it is. It's not a knock on Anthony. It just, for whatever reason, it just happened, on the Angels clock. And that's the unfortunate part because, what is it, 4 seasons now? You can't get a good measure of who is the real Anthony Rendon. Right. Because the current version for the Angels is just kind of great defensively. He does a nice job defensively and whatever, but he's become a much different hitter than he was, when he was killing it for the Nationals in the World Series against the Houston Astros. You know what I'm saying? It's a completely different guy. At least we've yet to see that guy on a consistent basis because of the injuries.
Yeah. I think I wonder too, especially with someone like Rendon, how much of it in the fans' eyes or maybe even in the media's eyes is exacerbated by, his contract size, and that people look at this as yet another Angel signing, akin to an Albert Pujols, although maybe not as lucrative, where you sign a big free agent to a big contract and they come in and they get, injured and they play, most of their contract time with the Angels hurt. But not that they want to. Victor, one of the things that you said a couple years back talking about Pujols was, him, I think you described it as him performing surgery on his own foot running down, the first base line, that it was that bad. He was that injured, yet he maybe what, kept kept it going was that he kept pushing himself to be out there, to be part of the team, to deliver for his teammates, for the fans, for the organization. And somehow in all of that, he got this reputation or this stigma of not being worth it and being a bust. And when he was actually doing everything he could to live up to the contract that he signed.
That's fair. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point because look, everything gets scrutinized nowadays, right? Carl Ravitch has a slip up the other day on the home run by Oral Roberts University, and everybody and their brothers writing articles about, oh, look what Carl did, he butchered this call. I'm like, who gives a shit? It's College World Series,
right?
I mean, it's he got caught up in the moment. It's still a great call. I mean, did he screw up? Yeah, okay, but who cares? At the end of the day, who cares?
Right.
Same thing with these big contracts. What concern is it of yours as a fan what a player is making? It's not your money. It's the owner's money. Now, there is an expectation from a fan perspective, right? That, hey, this guy, Albert Pujols, who was a Hall of Famer before he left St. Louis, before he even thought about leaving St. Louis, he was a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. Did you really think, in the history of baseball, of all these free agent contracts, aside from Barry Bonds, because of Barry Bonds, right? Aside from that, anybody that actually got better from the time they signed their free agent contract, the big lucrative deal, on the back end of their career, name a couple guys.
Right.
Because those are the exception. It's not the rule. For the most part, you're getting guys that have parlayed this excellence in their career to a big payday. You hope that it carries over, at least for the first 3-4 years of the deal. You hope you get to championship so that you got to pay the money. It's sunk money at the back end, those 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah, it is what it is. But we got to the promised land, or we got very close to the promised land, whatever the case may be. You can justify it, and it's all a business decision, right? At the end of the day, it's just making sure when you look at the ledger, you make more than you spend. I mean, that's basically the idea of business, right?
Sure.
And so I get where people get a little frustrated in the whole Albert situation. That's the only reason I brought it up, because you mentioned Albert and his contract. It's like that dude wanted to win in a bad way. If you think that he didn't care, or he didn't bust his ass, or he didn't put forth his best effort to help the Angels win and to live up to that expectation that the fans probably put on, or the contract and stuff, I mean, you are insane.
Yeah.
You're insane. That guy never mailed it in. You may have felt that way because, he's making $250 million plus a 10-year personal services deal, and he's only hitting 280. He's only hitting 25 home runs and only driving in 85. He sucks because he's not the Hall of Fame player that he was. But at the end of the day, I'll never forget this story. Remember when he first signed, right? He was off to an awful start. It was like May 6th, May 5th. The Blue Jays I'll never forget this. The Blue Jays were in town for a weekend series. He had yet to hit a home run on the season. He had yet to hit a home run. And I remember the first game of that series, and I was down in the cage, or they were taking BP, and I asked him, I said, hey, you good? Just kind of like, hey, you good? I know with all the people writing and saying stuff. He goes, typical, hey, man, don't worry about it. At the end of the year, I'm going to have my 30 and 100. 30 home runs and 100 RBI. At the end of the year, he knows what he's going to do. He knows what his job is. And he said at that point, next day, Saturday, I think it's a day game, hit the home run out the left field into the bullpen. That was number one. And what did he do at the end of the year? He had his 30 and he had his 100, which is that was his standard. That's what he knew he was capable of doing. Was he able to do it for 10 years? No. Right. And it's unfortunate. But I think everyone understood that it was on the back slope of his career, on the back nine. And, I wish it would have worked out better for him, for the Angels with Trouty and then Shohei. And so I wish it would have been much, much better. It just didn't happen that way. Look, got released by the Angels, got picked up by the Dodgers, right? Was given the opportunity to play for the Dodgers and to fill in role. And what he ended up doing, I think at 270, he had 12, 13 home runs for the Dodgers, rekindled his career, went back to St. Louis, and has a pretty damn good career. And, oh, by the way, it's a magical 700 season. Right. But everyone knew what his his role was at that time. He accepted it and went on. It just didn't happen to work out for the Angels, and that's the unfortunate part. But he cared, and I will argue to the day I die that that dude cared. And I remember him running down the line in Oakland, and you could see the pain as he's clobbering through the baseline. I think it was a ball down the line, only a single. I mean, you could just see how much pain he was in. But he wanted to play, wanted to put forth the effort and make sure that he earned his keep. That's all he really cared about.
Right. I love that. I love that perspective. And as an Angels fan, I appreciated that from you when you made that comment. And again, I don't know if it was during one of his last games or, toward the tail end of his career. You had mentioned that on a broadcast, and it just struck me so deep that, this guy was out there busting his ass, trying to make things happen, trying to earn his keep. He wasn't loafing, he wasn't trying to run slowly down the base pass. He was giving it 100%.
No doubt.
And at least he was out. And at least he was out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
He wasn't like, can I go on the IL? Which seems to be like the Anthony Rendon. I mean, he gets hurt and he's always on the IL.
Yeah.
So,
and I've never asked this question of Artie or John Carpino or anybody else, but I always felt in the back of my mind when you talk about the signing of Albert, you wanted the star power. You were hoping that you got some of the production from St. Louis, especially through the first 3-4 years of it. But nobody really talks about the positive impact that he had on a young stud prospect that was in the big leagues, making a name for himself
100%.
in Mike Trout.
Yep.
Nobody wants to talk about that. And how do you put a value on what he brought to the table to Mike specifically? Mm-hmm. Because I could walk by the tunnel downstairs by those lower dugout suites where you could see the guys hitting, and Albert's sitting on a chair with the bucket of balls. Trout's on the tee, and it's Albert putting the ball on the tee. Trouty hitting, and then they would rotate, and they just sit there for an hour just talking baseball, and just the amount of how to handle your business, and this is what's going to come, and the superstar stuff that Albert had already gone through in St. Louis.
Right.
There's a value to that. I'm not saying that was the gist of the $250 million, right? I'm just saying that when you're putting something together to go after a guy like Albert, like how much of an impact, how much of a positive impact can he have on a young player? Because he at a young age himself went through that. And Albert talks about it all the time, about all the veteran players in St. Louis that kind of brought him into the fold and taught him the right, the cardinal way of how to play baseball and how to act and jumping on a plane and, dealing with the media and all the expectations and the things that you have to deal with. I think there was value to that. Something that fans rarely see. Right.
Right.
But there was some value. I know we've gone way too long on the Albert situation, but you mentioned his name and we were talking about injuries and all this stuff. And like I said at the beginning of the show, right? Sometimes we go down this path,
right?
And we go down the rabbit hole, and we're just having fun with it.
It's a very organic podcast, and
no doubt,
it is.
No doubt. That's the way we like it. Let's talk about the week ahead. We can mention the Dodgers. Dodgers are clearly not the same team. They got 2 against the Dodgers on Tuesday and Wednesday. Off day again, so it's one of those weeks where you get 2 off days. And then you go to Colorado to take on the lowly Rockies. If I remember correctly, I'd have to go back and look. I didn't do the research, but I think the Angels do pretty well against the Colorado Rockies, especially in Colorado.
They do.
And I'll never forget the ball that Shohei hit in batting practice the first time we were up there. I think I posted it in a story, I think, in Instagram. But I gotta look it up. I mean, it's just because I circled it where that ball landed. Ridiculous. But anyways, so they got 5 games this week after coming off a 5-2 week. Jeff, you seem to be the guy that sets the line.
Yeah.
And last week we all, I think we were all pretty happy with how things went. What's the line for this week?
The line is 4, and I am not going 4 wins, and I'm not going to call out exactly how they get those. I don't know if it's a split with the Dodgers and sweep against the Rockies, or if it's 1-1. or I'm sorry, if they, sweep a 2-game set and then go 2-3 in Colorado. But 4 is what we need. 4 is actually what I think they will get. I've been to a couple Rockies games so far this season. They're just really bad. They're really, really bad.
What is this, year 7 of the 5-year rebuild for them?
It's horrible. There are, so I'll pump up Denver and Colorado.
By the way, how's
bit.
that Chris Bryant signing working out?
God.
Talking about long-term contracts that aren't working out.
You wouldn't be surprised to hear that gets a decent amount of play on local sports radio.
As it should.
Right.
Angels fans wanted him too.
Yes. Yeah, they did. I wonder if he would have been better in Anaheim. It's
or not.
It's a tough place to be a baseball player. It was a big week for Colorado last week. We won and celebrated an NBA championship yesterday. We had a kid from Colorado that won the U.S. Open. Things are going pretty well. It's a great
Geoff Stoddart's on the Angels Win podcast. I mean, Christ.
Right. I mean, what
more, overflow.
What more do people want? One of the biggest problems.
And he's single also, ladies.
And ready to mingle.
Settle down, boys. Settle down. But it's true. One of the biggest problems that we have as Colorado fans is that everybody goes to the games. The owners have no incentive to improve the team because fans show up.
Yeah.
I was there, gosh, when was it? It was 3 weeks ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago. Went and saw them play the Mets. It was sold out on a Sunday afternoon. And I'm thinking, why are all of you people here? Now, this is a place that people land. People have been escaping their, California, Illinois, all kinds of, states around. And, the next person that I meet that was born and raised here will probably be the first. Everybody around here is from somewhere else, myself included. So a lot of their attendance is driven by transplants, but there's a lot of purple in the stands. They just have a good fan base that shows up. They need to start staying away. Sorry, long rambling. They're a horrible team, and the Angels need to sweep them. And there's no reason that they shouldn't. They should have swept the Royals as well. They were this close. It was the one game in the last couple of weeks that the bullpen really let us down was on Saturday. But live and learn, right? So hopefully they can rebound from that. I'm looking for a sweep in Colorado.
Yeah. I'm thinking,
like, is that it? Great color analysis.
No, what I was going to say is that I think they'll split the Dodgers series, and I think that they'll take 2 out of 3 against the Rockies because let's face it, just like they did against the Royals and any good team that plays a team like the A's, the Royals, the Rockies, I mean, a light's going to shine on a dog's ass every now and then, right? And so, I mean, it's just going to happen. So, I mean,
I've never heard that. I've just never heard that.
You heard it first. So anyway,
I'm not sure that's exactly how the saying goes.
Go ahead. A light's always going to shine on a dog's ass. Like you said that with such certainty. Like we've heard this before.
I'm just saying, guys. Anything's going to – I mean, that game on Saturday, they should have won. I mean, let's face it. But there are things that – we lost the first game of the season against the Oakland A's with Shohei Ohtani on the mound, for crying out loud. Things are going to happen. There are teams that aren't good, but they're still professional baseball players. Mm-hmm. And if you don't make the right pitches, if you're putting guys on base via the walk like they did on Saturday, if you're not, if you're failing defensively, things are going to happen. And so what I'm saying is like every good team is going to have those types of games. And, A light's going to shine a dog's ass.
Okay, I had to look it up.
Is
The
there,
sun
is this a real
even
thing?
shines on a dog's ass every once in a while. It's an actual quote from apparently Albert Einstein.
Hey, yeah.
There you
I mean,
go.
come on.
There you go.
I've never heard that in my life, ever. And I use a lot of sayings.
I'm a freaking brainiac over here.
Shake yourself. Excuse me.
You think I pulled that out of my ass?
You did.
I do.
Well, you had the light. You had the light shine on there first for you to be able to pull that thing out.
Oh my God.
Dodgers at 39-33, 4 back in the West. And the Rockies at 29-45. They're 15 back. Rockies have lost 5 in a row. Dodgers got pounded by the Giants, by the way.
Oh, that was nice to
That's
see.
got to be awful at Dodger Stadium.
Right.
So we shall see what happens. And by the way, as far as worst team in baseball, everyone was so happy about the reverse, sellout or whatever at the Coliseum in Oakland when they were going well. Meanwhile, the Oakland A's have come back down to earth and have lost 5 in a row, 19-55, and the Royals are 19-52. So the battle for that worst team in baseball is going to the A's, a 257 win percentage versus 268 for the Royals.
Yeah.
So just crazy. I mean, we can that's a whole other episode. I mean, as far as the Oakland A situation, because
Yeah, we should talk about that next time. I'd love both of your opinions on them going to Vegas.
well, we got a couple minutes here if you want it before we get into the mailbag.
Let's do it. I want to hear Richter's opinion on it. Let's go.
Look, at the end of the day, there have been, the way I look at it is there have been ample opportunities for the team in the city, team in the county, team in the state to find some sort of common ground as far as building a brand new ballpark, wherever it is. I don't care. Most people say that the best, I think Dave Stewart is part of a group or was part of a group that I think the best option was, the easiest, most convenient, and least expensive option was just building it in the parking lot at the Coliseum. Because the park, you don't see that. The Angel Stadium situation and the Coliseum, you just don't see that anymore. Big surface lots where you have kind of like Shea Stadium and New City Field. They did it right there in the outfield. I think we're beyond that point where I'm not surprised that they sought the opportunity to go elsewhere at all. Yeah. Now, who's to blame for all of this? And you can say whatever you want about the owner, Mr. Fisher of the Oakland Athletics, and probably rightfully so, right? But he didn't put the franchise in this situation, as I see it. I mean, this is something that goes way back to when the Giants were talking about leaving San Francisco unless they got a brand new ballpark. And remember the territorial rights that the Giants currently have, I believe it's in San Jose, used to be that of the Oakland Athletics.
Right.
And so the A's basically kind of handed it off to them to kind of build their nest egg, if you will, with the city of San Francisco so that they can get a brand new ballpark. It wasn't supposed to be, hey, here are our territorial rights in perpetuity so you can have it forever. So that's where I have the biggest issue, because Major League Baseball never stepped in and said, no, that's wrong. These rights revert back to Oakland. They should have the opportunity to move to San Jose. Obviously, the Giants have a team in San Jose. So there's any number of different things, and it's a deep, dark rabbit hole to go down in, and there's plenty of blame to go around. But a lot of this rests right with the people at the MLB headquarters, and not.
Yes.
And this precedes Rob Manfred, although Rob was probably part of it with Commissioner Seelig and so on and so forth. A lot of this stuff happened a while back, and those wheels have been in motion. Do they need a brand new ballpark? Yes, they need a brand new ballpark. That Coliseum is awful. The fact that the city bent over backwards for Al Davis and the Oakland Raiders and built that monstrosity in center field, because it used to be a pretty damn good vista of the mountains in the background there.
Right.
And their fan base is tremendous. I've said everyone bitches about the games on TV and the drums. I never it never bothered me because I love that atmosphere. I think it's fun. Maybe it's because Hispanic and my dad coached in Puerto Rico and Venezuela and Dominican Republic. That's the atmosphere consistently in winter ball in those countries. And so that's why I've always liked it. The fans in Oakland are great. They're dedicated. They love their team. They love their franchise. They love their players. They'll back them to the hilt. And so this has nothing to do with the Oakland A's fan base. It's just a shitty ballpark that has been going worse every year for the last 20 plus years, 30 years. And now we're at the nexus of, hey, if we don't get a ballpark, we're going to move. Well, this is the only deal we can make. Okay, well, we're going to take the best deal possible, which an owner should. And now they're going to Vegas, assuming Major League Baseball approves the deal, which I would imagine is just a rubber stamp approval. I do kind of like what Bryce Harper said in the article, I think over the weekend, about he's obviously a Vegas guy, that any team that moves really shouldn't be known as the A's. That should be synonymous with, it's Philadelphia, Kansas City, Oakland. I mean, that's kind of how it happened, right? Yep. That A's franchise name, look, feel should stay, I think, in Oakland. That's just my personal opinion. I like the idea of rebranding it and refocusing things in Las Vegas. But something needed to happen. I've been saying they should move to Vegas. God, for the last 10 plus years, I've been saying that just to get them out of that ballpark, because I just always had the sense that they were never, ever going to come to an agreement on financing for a brand new ballpark. We've all lived in California. The politics in California are just that it's very difficult. That's why I think it's very difficult on the Angel situation. We've talked about this. We'd already put the team up for sale. That 1.5 to 2 billion post-close expenditure, the Shohei Ohtani, the land, and the facility, whether it's renovation or a brand new one, that's an uphill battle. That's a long uphill battle unless someone just wants to write a check with all their funny money. I don't think that's going to happen. So that's where I'm at with the Oakland A situation. I think it's great that the fans did that. I'm glad they voiced their opinions, but that team was in Vegas long before this season started. And I'm just ready for fans to pack a different facility to, at least if they keep the Oakland A's moniker, to back the Oakland A's as they should be backed on a consistent basis.
Yeah. I've worked in the software industry for a number of years now. And back about 10, 12 years ago, I worked for Cisco Systems, and Cisco was actually going to be the lead or had purchased the naming rights to the ballpark that the A's were supposed to build in the San Jose, Santa Clara area. And we had a whole floor that was dedicated with like mock-ups of the thing and what the seats were going to look like and this, that, and the other. It was all set to go. The challenge was that area that they were going to build it in was zoned to be part of the San Francisco Giants. They owned that area, and the Giants wanted a big payday for the A's to be able to take that over. And it was probably 15 miles from the A's stadium. I mean, they're both very close to each other. That Major League Baseball, to your point, didn't step in and go, no, we're giving this to them because it's for the good of the game. It needs to happen. I think that's really sad that baseball let that kind of slip away. From an Angel standpoint, for Angel fans, with the constant bickering that's been going back and forth with Artie in the city of Anaheim over the last however many years, I've always been afraid that the Angels might be vulnerable to be plucked up and go to Vegas. So by the A's going there, I was actually kind of relieved that I think that solidifies the Angels, at least in my mind, and I may be completely wrong on that, but it kind of solidifies them more in Southern California to stay.
Agreed.
again, tying in some Angels to this discussion.
Well, I wouldn't mind if they moved to Nashville. I'm just saying.
You selfish bastard.
I am selfish.
And for those who are just wondering, it was 1989. I just looked it up. I couldn't remember the date. It was 1989 when Commissioner Seelig basically said that the rights are going to remain with the San Francisco Giants. And as a matter of fact, Jeff, in this article that I just pulled up, it's the artist rendering of the Cisco Field in San Jose, California. Mm-hmm. That article was written back in 2012.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was former A's owner Levi Strauss, the heir, Wally Haas, agreed to give the rights to that San Jose area to the San Francisco Giants, really for the purpose of building a brand new ballpark, because the Giants they were going to Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Tampa was the place where they were originally going to go. That fell through, and this is off the top of my head now. There was a huge lawsuit that ensued from that, and I want to say Mike Piazza's dad somehow was involved in that, and it ended up getting a pretty good chunk of money after the fact. I'd have to look that up because of the whole failed move to Tampa and so on and so forth. So, this has been ongoing for a long time, and sure, young folks are probably sitting there going, "Wow, I can't believe the A's just moved out of the blue." No, this has been going on for a long, long time, and that little battle, if you will, for the territorial rights to that San Jose area. It's a shame because that's really where they belong.
Yes,
and maybe part of it was because there's a concern. I'm going back in time to when Seelig made that decision. If he forced, I still think it's a completely different situation, but if he had forced the Giants to say, those aren't your rights, which is what he should have done. Those are the Oakland A's rights. Could the same have been done or said, or legal fights ensued in Chicago or New York as far as territorial rights? I don't think so, because I think Los Angeles.
Yeah,
I don't know that would be the case because this is different. This is not like the Yankees said, hey, Nelson Doubleday, we're going to give you, these 3 boroughs here so that you can get a brand new Shea Stadium built, but we want those back. Yeah, that completely different situation, right? Those territorial rights have been established. Gosh, look at the beef when they moved the Expos to Washington, to DC. That whole mess that's still in litigation between the Orioles and the Nationals on the television side of things, because they had to create a network. They were sharing the TV rights. The Orioles own the bulk of that network. I think the Nationals are up to like 25% or so. That's why the national sale hasn't gone anywhere, because there's a legal dispute over the whole territorial rights from a broadcast perspective with Masson. Which is the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. So it covers both teams. It's just a mess. And so it's unfortunate. I feel bad for A's fans. I really do. The place is a dump. I mean, it is what it is. It has been for a long time. And I remember going there. One quick story, and we'll get to the mailbag. I remember going there. There was a trip that my dad was on with the Royals. It was a family trip. And we all went out there. And it was one of those Oakland to Anaheim trips. So because Disneyland and all that stuff. And I remember my mom was so pissed because this is when Oakland was pretty good. Still in the 70s, they were pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and it was packed. And they sat the Royals families up in the upper deck. My mom was so pissed. I can't wait till we get back to Kansas City. We're going to put them in the outfield by the fountains, blah, 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 all that stuff. But I remember my brother catching a foul ball. That's like the first time, the whole idea of being a fan of a ball coming to the stands, and my older brother catching a foul ball, and then us going down to Disneyland and staying. I want to say we stayed by Disneyland over there while they played the Angels. So I have fond memories of Oakland and that Coliseum when it was a beautiful, cool looking Coliseum.
Right.
But it's just they needed to do something about it. So
so much like Angels Stadium before they enclosed it for the Rams. Yeah. It was a beautiful baseball ballpark. Yep. And they bastardized both of them. you know, when they closed him in for football. And, you know, the Angels have reconfigured and blown it out and, you know, corrected a bit, but you know, Oakland never did. And it's just the worst place to go see a game. It's really horrible.
And it's terrible because of the history of the 70s and 80s and
great
my
franchise.
God, they had so many good teams. Some of my favorite players were on the A's. I mean, Ricky Henderson, that outfield of Ricky Henderson and Tony Armas and Dwayne Murphy, one of my favorite outfields all time growing up that I was following. And I mean, just
well, before Reggie Jackson became Yankee Reggie Jackson, he had 3 rings with the A's in Oakland.
Yeah, Carney Lansford, all those guys. Yeah.
Reggie. So Reggie wearing number 9, and his beef with Charlie Finley, the owner of the Oakland A's, and got traded to Baltimore. People forget he was an Oriole for 3 seconds, right. And did not want to report, and then became a free agent, and then the Yankees signed him. So. Yeah, there's a great, by the way, Reggie Jackson documentary. I want to say it's on Netflix. I saw that. It was really cool. Really cool. Gives you a different perspective of Reggie. It paints him in a, you know, because I remember him as a very standoffish, very cocky, and which I didn't mind the cockiness because he backed it up, right?
Right.
But it's a cool, unique perspective on how he saw it, and his teammates saw it too. The way he was treated towards the end of his career at Oakland. He's a guy that should have been an Oakland Athletic for the rest of his career. Yeah. I mean, I really felt that, but Charlie Finley just was not going to allow for a player to get the better part of him. So he ended up being a Yankee and then an Angel and all that stuff. So anyway, Jeff, let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
All right, mailbag. So let's see. Travis. Boom. Travis from Whittier asks, and this is something ties into something we were talking about earlier, and something we were talking about in earlier episodes. I think it was episode 4, maybe, about Fletcher. He says, with so many infielders on the IL, why is Fletcher, who is making $6 million and batting 365 with the Bees, not being called up? And he says, is there tension between him and the front office or the coaches? And if there is tension, I'm not aware of any. What do you guys think? Is it time for him to come back up?
I would think so.
I think so.
I mean, I would think so. And I can't imagine there's much tension from David's side.
No.
He's on the 1st and the 15th, he's just checking that direct deposit, make sure it hits. So stick him up. Yeah. I can't imagine that he's feeling any ill will or anything like that towards the organization that paid him handsomely. And he's just not. That's not his character. I guess it's a matter of where do they see a fit and where do they need it as far as a need. And David's a guy, because he's a veteran player and he's making the money he's making, that needs to play every day. He needs to get his ABs, because maybe there is a team that would take on his money, as far as part of a package of players if you're going to make a move in August. But that's more of a front office question. That's hard for us to answer without, knowing the inner workings of everything.
And right now, Jeff, the Angels have Michael Stefanik up, kind of a David Fletcher-esque type player, if you will. Mm-hmm. Makes great contact, not a lot of power, not great speed, but he's not slow on the bases either. Fletcher obviously is a much better defender. I think he's going to be the guy that's potentially called up to replace Anthony Rendon. Obviously, they won't make the announcement probably till tomorrow, before the game. But he's not on the 40-man anymore, guys. Yep. I mean, that's so. But they can also move, I think, Jose Suarez to the 60-day, and it's not a problem. So, I don't think there's any tension to answer the question, the latter part of that question.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, let's see. This one is from Andres in Santa Ana, talking about the trade deadline coming up. and the need for pitching. And he says, what would a hypothetical package for Corbin Burnes look like? And then he says, thank you. Love the podcast.
Burnes, is he a free agent to be? I have to
Ooh,
look that up.
I think he is. Jeff, get on it. I think he is. Gosh, I'm not sure. I want to say he is after.
So he's got
year.
this year and then one more.
So you're gonna give up a lot more, Victor,
Yeah.
if you get a half a season for a playoff push and a season.
It's difficult to do hypothetical player packages for trades just because you as an organization value your players one way and another organization will value your players maybe the same way, but perhaps a completely different way, right? We may think the world of Joe Adell. 29 other teams may think of Joe Adell as his time has passed. He's probably a fourth outfielder. He's a 26th man on a roster. You don't know that until you actually start engaging in conversation. It's not like anybody's going to tip their hand anyway. But, everyone, rates their players. That's why they've got scouts that go down to the minor leagues. From A-ball, AA, AAA, they scout all players from all organizations so that they have an idea of, come trade deadline, hey, these are the guys we want to focus in on. That's who we like, who we see as a fit in our organization. Not so much what they're doing now or whatever, the promise that they could bring or get them with our guys and we can make him a better player, especially for a fringe guy. That's how that all works. So that's why it makes it so difficult. I could throw 4 names on the wall and they could mean nothing. So that's why I try to avoid the hypothetical thing. Even when I think when media members start to throw some names out there, it's because scouts have started to speak or agents have started to speak that maybe there is some fire where that smoke is coming from. But out of the blue to say, hey, what's a good package for Corbin Burnes? I don't know, Joe Adell, Griffin Canning, and an A-ball guy. I'm just making something up. You know what I'm saying? It's that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah. And also, you look at the National League, Central, that's a crapshoot now. You got the Reds, you got the Brewers who are, you got, the Cardinals, my God, we don't want to talk about them, but the Pirates, but the Brewers could win that division at 500 or even slightly below 500. Right now you look at the talent in that division and you want to say it's between the Brewers and the Reds. So why would you give up your ace when you could get hot in the playoffs, right? And I've also seen this on the mailbag, Jeff, Shane Bieber. Why would you give him up when the Cleveland Guardians have a chance to win they're in another shitty Central division, but in the American League. Why would you give up your ace? So I think the player that the Angels could go after is Marcus Stroman because he's got an opt-out after this year. And you get him for the playoff push. So just not my favorite guy, but he's pitching really well. He hates Angels Twitter, I'll tell you that.
You're just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
By the way, for everybody listening, Corbin Burnes is on a 1-year contract for $10 million. So he'll be a free agent at the end of the year.
Yeah,
okay.
he was. No, he's got arbitration. That was an arbitration deal. That's why he was chapped in. Because I think the arbiter went with the Brewers number, and I think he was really. I remember there was an interview with him in spring training in Maryvale. He was pretty pissed off at the Brewers for that whole process. So he's got one more year. I'm looking at Stroman's thing. He's had a two-year, $50 million deal with a 24-player option. The other thing that scares me is that player option. If it's a player option, you're on the hook for whatever it is that number is. He's not a $25 million a year player.
No.
Yeah. I don't know what the option is. I haven't read the option, but I would imagine it's probably in that range. He's just not that guy. I just don't, he's having a fantastic season.
He's at best, Victor, in my opinion, a number 2 at best, but you could probably slot him into a number 3.
Yeah.
And you also have to look at who are the Angels going to kick to the curb if they acquire a pitcher, right? I mean, you're not going to send Tyler Anderson, who's pitching poorly, but he's keeping us at least in games in the majority of his starts. Canning's been doing good. Berea, I mean, Patrick Sandoval's pitching. You're not going to, Detmers is not going to leave the rotation. Otani's not going anywhere. So who goes if you acquire a starting pitcher? Maybe just bulk the hell out of the bullpen. I mean, get guys like Chapman and there's a whole bunch of other guys that are playing on, crappy teams. Just get those guys. I mean, just bulk up. You look at every successful team in every playoff run, and they have an outstanding bullpen.
Indeed.
So.
Indeed. All right, one more, and then we're running long here. Kind of the same question from Scott from Beaumont and Luke from Riverside. Want to know if the Angels' recent success is helping Phil Nevin in his push to keep his job and maybe extend his contract before the end of the year.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I tell you what, that game the other day, when Nevin took Estevez out because he just didn't have it, and brought in Webb, and Webb got the save, huge. I mean, that final game, right? When I saw, first of all, that was a great move taking him out instead of just saying, "Oh, he's the closer, he'll figure it out." It's his job. He's going to either succeed or fail, right?
Right.
Which we've seen from previous managers of the Angels do that, right? And then you see him embrace Estevez. He was the first person that he ran out to, Nevin, to just give him a hug and say, "It's all right, man. We got this." And that meant a lot to me. Like, this manager has his players' best interest in mind. And from what I know from talking to people, they love him. The players absolutely love Phil Nevin. And you look at some of his in-game decisions compared to some of our previous managers, especially when you get into Scioscia's latter years. I mean, and don't even get me started on Madden. I mean, or Osmus. But he's been pretty good. You can question. As fans, we're always going to question some calls, right? Every time. But I think, oh, not you, Jeff. So anyway, I think he's deserving of an extension, but I think that we need to let this kind of play out a little longer.
He's certainly on the right path.
Correct. What about you, Victor?
I'll leave it there. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of your roster as far as the wins and losses, right? The question becomes, as a front office, when you start the evaluation process, is like, all right, is this guy a fit? Are guys listening to him? Is his message being delivered properly? Do you like what he represents as far as the organization is concerned? And then, the wins and losses are really just determined based on the roster, right? Happenstance. So I think currently, I think it's trending in the positive direction. He's treating it as if it is an audition, which he kind of should, since he's on a 1-year deal. And all of that was just predicated upon, the whole not knowing what's going to happen in, with the sale of the team. So I think it's trending that way. I think he's done a nice job, and everything I've read, and accessibility and all that stuff, and handling the media, everything seems, he's checking boxes, which is what everyone thought he would be. A little insight. It was 2009 winter meetings in Indianapolis, I think it was. My brother was helping run the player development side for the Detroit Tigers. And he asked me about, hey, what do you know about Phil Nevin? I said, I don't know a whole lot. I know I think he was a punter, and I think he went to El Dorado High School, and he went to Cal State Fullerton, and, big dude. He hit the ball a long way when he made contact back into play. I said, why? He goes, I'm interviewing him for a managerial job in the Tiger system. So Mike, my brother, is like one of the first jobs that Nevin got as a minor league manager was at that point. I don't know why that popped into my head, but just talking about Phil. So Everyone
really
has
cool.
a lot of good things to say about Phil, always have, especially as a coach and potential manager. So I think that's all playing out. One last thing before we go. Stroman's player options for $21 million. There's little boosters in there. If he gets to 160 innings either last year or this year, it goes up $2 million. So it could potentially be $23 million.
Which isn't too bad.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but you're rolling the dice, right? So you've got a player option. It's guaranteed glue. That's why I'm saying, in a trade perspective, you're putting yourself like, do you want to spend that $23 million on Marcus Stroman, or use $23 million to sign or re-sign Shohei Ohtani? Those are the things when you start, getting to the nitty gritty of negotiations and trades that come into play. Jeff, nice job with the mailbag as always.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It's probably by far our longest episode, and I didn't think we were going to get there, but the A's conversation kind of took us down that rabbit hole.
The A's
And
Albert
Pujols.
Pujols.
And Albert Pujols.
We're
So next
approaching
week's
Joe
broadcast-
Rogan timing.
Yeah, episode 10.
Guys, I just want to say real quick, everybody always asks, what is Chuck drinking? This is John Wayne, legendary The Duke.
Everyone is asking
And-
that?
Everyone?
Everyone?
Yeah, I mean,
everyone really ask
I get texts, emails, tweets.
Oh.
What are you drinking, Chuck?
That's cool.
Anyway,
Jeff, you get any text or tweets about what you're drinking?
I haven't. How about you, Victor?
You will now.
It's weird.
Me
that
neither.
after the single announcement,
I think I have like 3 or 4 more followers than Chuck, and nobody's ever asked me what I'm drinking.
Right. Victor,
because you always
Victor, there's a question I had. I forgot to ask earlier. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking.
it's always the same thing. Yeah, it's
and
vodka
it's
and some
paying,
kind of
It's paying the bills to keep these lights on.
I love it.
it's vodka and something that has electrolytes.
And Believe it. Exactly. All right. So
Anyway,
Duke,
guys,
where can you
the
get that
Duke,
bourbon?
It's good.
The Duke.
Where
Yeah.
The Duke.
Can you get it at SNA at the airport? John Wayne?
Oh, you probably should. I
Right.
mean, yeah, but a bottle only goes for $39.99, and it's super smooth, and I recommend it, guys.
For Chuck Richter, Geoff Stoddart, I'm Victor Rojas. Thanks for listening to the Angels Win podcast. As always, we appreciate it. Be sure to follow us. Where are they following us at Angels Win on Twitter, right? At Angels Win?
At Angels Win, yes.
At Angels Win. And what was the email again, Jeff?
It's Chuck
Chuck
at angelswin.com to ask your questions about Chuck, what are you drinking?
Or to get your free plugs for your alcohol.
It's marketing.
Send it over to Chuck, all right?
It's marketing.
No, it's marketing if you're getting paid.
angelswin.com.
Oh, marketing. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right,
Great
guys.
job, gentlemen. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Angels Win podcast with Victor Rojas, Chuck Richter, and Geoff Stoddart. Go Halos and drive home safely.
Say goodbye.